Yeah, well, Morris himself influenced a wide variety of people, including C.R. Ashby, who obviously wanted to live out Morris's idea, and the countryside idyll as well. So obviously that's why he moved from London to Chipping Camden, the Cotswolds, really live out Morris's ideals.
C.R. Ashby's Guild of Handicraft had gained recognition in the art world for his designs in furniture, jewellery, glass and metalwork, including this repoussé copper frame made for the noted pre-Raphaelite painter William Holman Hunt's painting May Morning on Magdalen Tower. By 1902, Ashby could no longer countenance for his artisans the unhealthy environment of London's East End. Having sought out potential rural workshop sites across the English countryside, exactly as William Morris had done in the 1880s before settling on Merton Abbey, Ashby ultimately moved his artisans' 50 families up to the clean air and wholesome countryside of the Cotswolds. In the medieval market town of Chipping Camden, Ashby had taken over a disused silk mill. On the first floor he set up workshops for jewellery, silver and enamelling, and on the second those for cabinet making, wood carving and French polishing. Outbuildings housed the few powered machines such as saws and planers, and the smithy, a necessary arrangement for both noise and fire prevention. A writer visiting in 1905 reported that, quote, "Every window looks on to a lovely common garden. Every bench has a posy on it. Nothing could be more delightful than to be doing rationally good work in such surroundings," end quote. The wholesome life Ashby envisioned for his artisans continued outside the workshop walls. The Guild built an outdoor swimming pond and organized athletic events. Annual theatrical productions were performed every January, with Guild members and their families filling the roles. The production of Guild revels had become a sort of annual tradition among arts and crafts communities. Beginning in 1899, members of the Art Workers Guild in London had written, designed and performed a dramatic pageant, Beauty's Awakening, a Masque of Winter and Spring, at the London Guildhall. This was an attempt to show how London had the potential to become a great artistic city, if only its civic administration would recognize the value of the arts to all the citizens, and reviews described it as, quote, "the finest and most completely satisfactory artistic spectacle ever witnessed by a London audience," end quote. The guilds promoted a strong focus on the arts as central to social well-being. In so doing, they provided a model for other utopian artistic communities in both Britain and America. Since William Morris first moved to the Cotswolds in 1871, the region's rolling hills and pleasant stone villages were chosen by many arts and crafts adherents as a location to live out their ideals. The rural landscape and abundance of nature provided an optimum setting for the creation of inspired works and a better life for the artisans and their families. Among the Cotswold immigrants were the designers and furniture makers Ernest Jimson and the Barnsley brothers Ernest and Sidney, who founded a craft colony here in 1893.
The Barnsley workshops are continuing, and they have a modern workshop now that's still going in the same location as it was, and descendants of the family are still making furniture to the same specification as their older relatives were, which is really nice, and visitors can actually go along and see these items being made, which is lovely, and that's deep in the countryside as well, exactly where it used to be. So I think that's great. And again, with Chipping Camden, there's the Hart workshops, the silversmiths, that are still carrying on. They've been there since C.R. Ashby was there in the village, which is great, you know, to see that continuing after all these years, in a real success story.
In 1904, Ashby was proud to open the Camden School of Arts and Crafts, the educational arm of the Guild of Handicraft. They offered courses such as carpentry, gardening, music, physical fitness, and domestic crafts such as cookery to students both young and old. The school was attended by the young Gordon Russell, who later, after serving with distinction in World War I, would go on to found his own design workshops in his home village of Broadway nearby. He designed furniture and also a line of metalwork under the Ligon name. This Gordon Russell cabinet won an award at the Paris exhibition in 1924. He continued to design furniture throughout most of the 20th century, adapting his designs to suit the lean years during World War II and strict rationing of materials, with his utility line of furniture. Some of the last furniture he designed, such as this yew table, demonstrate that he never lost the arts and crafts aesthetic of simple construction that allowed the natural beauty of local woods to shine through. Ray Lee and Trevor Chin of the Gordon Russell Trust explain.
And all our early furniture was made principally in oak,
Yes.
because that was the thing to do. But gradually other timbers started to be drawn in.
Yeah.
Walnut is slow growing, and it has a beautiful grain, and when you start to make furniture in walnut, it becomes more expensive, but it has a sort of an added quality to it, and it's a native timber. English walnut, you've got walnuts all over the world, and it remains to this day a very expensive material to use. And to use it in solid would be fairly expensive. And South American rosewood is probably the most decorative. Bombay rosewood is another. And then, of course, I mean, quite rightly, the forest where these materials came from, the country started to impose limitations on exporting solid timber, and they started to encourage people to use veneers, which is absolutely right, because I mean, to chop up large sections of Brazilian rosewood is criminal.
Yeah. And Gordon had a great respect from the craftsmanship that came from those employed as joiners within the farming industry. He always said to me once, if you want to see a perfect piece of cabinet making, as such, he said, look at a horse and cart, but don't look at the horse, look at the cart, because that had got craftsmanship in every angle. And
that's an interesting point, because when you look at that table, you've got that drop leaf oak table, it's pure cart. You know, the framing draws very much on what one might term farm implements and wagons. English yew tree has this beautiful grain, and the sapwood is almost white. I mean, it's a sort of creamy colour. And most people would cut that out and get rid of it and go for the figured grain. But Gordon didn't do that. He used the combination of the sap and the heart of the tree, and as he said, the sapwood is the river running through the timber, and laburnum.
And laburnum, that was another beautiful timber.
Boxwood.
Boxwood, yes. In actually, even to pull a draw out, you felt something lovely to hold. And it came in the fingers correctly. And
goes back to Morris, who said, have nothing in your home that's not beautiful. It's a good principle, really.
John Pearson is a noted arts and crafts metalworker who first worked in London for William Morris and then became the first metalworker at C.R. Ashby's Guild of Handicraft. Pearson left the Guild in 1891 to work as a freelancer and relocated to Cornwall to contribute to the New Lynn Copper Workshop. It had been set up in 1890 as a way to revitalize the region's failing fishing industry. The fishermen were trained to work in copper and eventually produced a wide range of household objects, specializing in repoussé copper work, and produced a wide range of domestic and decorative items. Favorite decoration included nautical themes such as ships and fish. The school at New Lynn Copper remained active for about 30 years. Another key workshop was the Keswick School of Industrial Art in the Lake District, not far from the home of John Ruskin, art critic and visionary of the arts and crafts movement. Here, the high standards of training developed into a respected industry under such key designers as Harold Stabler and metalworker Thomas Clark. In the Midlands, the Birmingham Guild of Handicraft was established in 1890 by several followers of John Ruskin and William Morris. Arthur Stansfield Dixon, the silversmith and architect, designed the Guild's headquarters on Great Charles Street in Birmingham. The Guild employed about 20 craftsmen, and its motto was "By hammer and hand." Through its directors, the Guild was connected with the Birmingham School of Art, where Ruskin pottery founder Edward R. Taylor was its headmaster. W.A.S. Benson was another leading arts and crafts metalwork designer who was a friend to William Morris and designed for Morris and Company. This Benson chafing dish was designed to keep food warm, taking advantage of copper's heat-conducting properties with contrasting brass handles. From his factory in Hammersmith, Benson revitalized work in copper, and his West End showroom elevated it to a fashionable purchase for discerning clients. He was an innovative designer, creating this veined fire screen in copper and brass that would have been a showpiece of the arts and crafts home. As a joy to the maker and the user, handmade brass and copper objects in the arts and crafts movement revived historic workshop techniques evident in their worked surfaces, such as shallow hammer marks or the use of abrasives to produce a dull satin finish. They outshone mass-produced factory wares and elevated base metals into a respected art form that continues to beautify collections today. The universal principles of the arts and crafts movement contributed to its adoption beyond Britain, where it took root in Europe, North America, and former colonies like Australia by the turn of the century. Within Europe, Germany and Scandinavia were particularly receptive to the arts and crafts interest in the democratization of art and the revival of folk crafts and vernacular architecture. Romantic nationalism, in which the folk arts of European countries were adapted to redefine a modern national identity, was strong among the four Scandinavian countries. At the turn of the century, Norway was seeking independence from Sweden and celebrated its heritage through the Viking revival style and works like this chair by the designer and woodcarver Lars Kinsarvik. In Sweden, the arts and crafts philosophy that beauty must be an integral part of everyday life was central to the work of Ellen Key, the widely read author of Beauty for All. Key used the home of artists Carl and Karen Larson in the province of Dalarna as her ideal model.